Hey guys, first video here. Hope I scrub up alright. I do apologise for not being here today. We do have Jasper's baby shower, so hopefully we get some good gifts. Maybe a good time for you to start planning what you're going to get me for when the baby arrives. But most importantly, we'll go through what we're going to do today. Today, you are going to learn about the big idea of memory. Now, we just discussed racism, inequality. We've also looked at the symbols related to them, and in fact, what zoomorphism is. So I'm expecting that to be evident in some of your paragraphs today, if you get there. So yes, you're going to learn about the big idea of memory. To be successful in this lesson, you are going to analyze key scenes, plus the events relating to memory. And memory is quite a broad topic, and remember, we call this one of our big ideas. There are 4 big ideas. I hope that you can, we've narrowed 2 together. So injustice and inequality we've put with racism. And we looked at the 4 different types of racism. Today we're looking at memory and everything involved with memory. Now remember, we're isolating them for the purpose of going through each task, but you need to know that memory isn't completely isolated from racism. Okay, and injustice and inequality. It's also not isolated from identity and belonging, which is what we're going to look into next week. So if you start to think about these as a collective, you're going to have more to write about, more examples, and an in-depth knowledge of both texts. And that's what we want to see. You're also going to be able to compare the similarities and differences of the idea in both texts. Very important. Obviously, compare and contrast is one of the key skills for this comparative unit. If you don't compare, then you will not pass the SAC. So make sure you're doing this task and you're not just thinking, that's too hard, I'll leave it for the practice SAC or the SAC. So first of all, what I want to go through is this idea of memory. Okay, I've broken it down, and I want you to remember it in 2 forms. So you know how we had four forms of racism? 2 forms of memory. Remembering, so remembering what life was like, for example, in the Black Diggers, for those who went to war and in return. So that idea of memory being something that is quite a negative experience, whilst they did have positive experiences and were something during the war. They remembered what they were like and how they were accepted during the war, to come home and remember what that's like in terms of where they are now is something that that they really struggle with in the Black Diggers. And then obviously this is a key chapter in the longest memory, and we're going to you're going to analyse that a little bit later on in terms of Whitechapel. The other one, I guess the dichotomy, so you know, the black or white, is forgetting. Alright, so forgetting is something that Whitechapel wants to experience. He doesn't want to remember things. He doesn't remember because of the trauma, the loss, and the violation that has occurred throughout his lifetime. Although when we start to talk about identity, it does shape who he is as a person. So remembering and forgetting. Okay, don't forget that. So when we look at memory and we have those 2 things. We have trauma, alright, so we have physical trauma, and obviously mental, alright, in terms of, it should be psychological, actually, not mental, but psychological trauma. We have with loss, and again, these aren't all isolated, they do correlate with each other. Loss, we have identity, so loss of identity. Remember, we spoke about remembering who they were, what the diggers were like at the war, how they were accepted, and that loss of identity, but also this idea of the loss of loved ones. Okay, that really shapes particularly Whitechapel's view of himself, but also those around him, and of course his family. You know, who only see him as Grandpa fall down. Then violation, really close to, in fact, should be linked to trauma. You know, the violation in terms of murder, which is, if you consider that to be physical trauma, but also privacy. We see it right at the start, and particularly the ending in the longest memory when they talk about, you know, all sleeping together, So a violation of privacy and I guess rights. Okay, we link all of this stuff in with racism. Of course, and then there is, on the other side of the coin, there are some positive memories in the text. And I really want you to start thinking about, do both these texts just treat memory as a negative experience? Okay, that's something that you need to think about. I'll put down that there is a positive in that idea of remembering what life was like for those who found their identity during the war. But also there's this idea of love. We do see this idea of family, both in the Black Diggers and The Longest Memory. So obviously Birdie is a character who's adored by his mum. And then we have The Longest Memory, we have Lydia and Chapel. So that idea of remembering the good times and what life could have been like, and I guess that link to hope to the future, which we've discussed about also. So for today, what I want you to start doing, and it's no similar to the structure, it's very similar to what we've done in the past. I've given you some key events. There's a lot more, and we're going to break down this further. I'm not going to set homework for the weekend. Just please make sure that you catch up with all the racism stuff that we covered, but try and finish this because we are moving on to more in-depth events and analysis. So in the Black Diggers, 1939 Cherbourg, it's the Blokes by the Fire scene. It's on page 78. I want you to examine that. I also want you to have a look at 1956, The Old Soldier, which is Ern's monologue. Remember we spoke about internal monologues and external monologues? I want you to tell me what type of monologue that is, okay? The Longest Memory, and so make sure you're using that language when you're writing your passages when I get down to the task here. The Longest Memory, we have Cook reacting to a rape. Okay, so try and categorize all of these at the start by, is it remembering or forgetting? Quite clearly this one is remembering, it's a reflection. The chapter remembering, quite obvious that one, page 1 and 2, and then forgetting, page 138. Okay, I want you to examine them and I want you to do the following things. I'll put a photo of this that's clearer on the Google Classroom so you can actually understand without the reflection. Task 1, examine each of the events above with focus on the following. I want you to describe each scene. Alright, very briefly. I don't want a full paragraph summary on what's happening, just a brief description so it's a cue for you to remember that these scenes can relate directly to memory and most notably forgetting or remembering. I want you to tell me the themes and ideas prevalent. Of course, this idea is in there. Memory is in there, okay? That's why I've given it to you. But, again, they're not isolated. So all those ideas of racism, the types of racism, all the other subgenre themes that's on our PowerPoint, that's also on the Google Classroom, go through and try and link, okay? Because just because you might get a prompt on memory, or you might get a prompt on identity, doesn't mean that you can't use any of these examples. Okay, so make sure you're looking holistically and not just isolating them. So themes and ideas. Then I want you to show me the quotes that represent the themes and ideas that you've taken out from that from both texts. And most importantly, I want you to write an authorial intent statement. Okay, so we've been practicing this in the past. Some of us are getting really good at interpreting what is being suggested through these quotes. Okay, so the key here is not just to say this. Therefore, this idea links to the idea of forgetting. Okay, you need to tell me why the author has done that. You need to also make the link to context. So remember the example that I gave you yesterday. All right, use that as the foundation to start you off in terms of your own authorial intent statements and the quotes that you find. That's task 1. Moving on, task 2. Is over here. I don't know why I've done it that way. So once you've done that, I want you to have a go at writing a comparative structured paragraph. Alright, so remember text A, text B, compare and contrast. That's the structure that most of you will follow. Some of you will do text A, text B, text A, text B, and compare and contrast in between, like throughout. That's fine, but I encourage most of you who are still not masters or completely comfortable at writing a comparative paragraph to do text A, text B, 2 examples for each, and then compare and contrast. Alright, so look at the differences. Whilst you're doing that, don't forget that I want next lesson we will look at the literary devices, but it doesn't mean that you can't right now. Okay, you have that prior knowledge of what symbols are and motifs are, and imagery and all these ideas of zoomorphism. It can still link into this. Okay, so link it to your ideas. The prompt that you're going to answer, or the question, is: memory is pain trying to resurrect itself. Hopefully we all know who said that, and it's in the first chapter. Memory is pain trying to resurrect itself. To what extent is this true in both the Black Diggers and the Longest Memory? Okay, so it's a to what extent question, which means you can map it out, yes, yes, no. But for now, I don't want you to write a full essay. By all means, on the weekend, if you want to, go for it. But I want you to write a paragraph, okay, answering that question, which means that you just need one idea and explore 2 examples for each text. Alright, that's pretty much the bulk of the lesson. This will pretty much, I hope you should be able to get this done in one single, okay? If you don't get there, I want it done for homework, okay? That's where we're at the moment. If you have any questions over the weekend, don't be afraid to send me the email. And I hope this video turns out alright. Please behave for the CRT that you have also. Not that I have to tell you. You guys are great. Okay? Thank you.